Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to show you some of the things I like to do after installing openSUSE. There's about 5 or 6 little tweaks that I typically will do after I install the distro, and openSUSE is right up there on my list of one of my favorites, probably my very favorite RPM distro overall. But there's a few things that I like to change or actually enhance after I install openSUSE, and so I thought I would just kind of share those with you today. So the first thing I would like to do is, hey, where'd I go? Oh, I'm in the corner. Wow. Kind of reminds me of what my Aunt Foghorn Matilda used to say. Jack, get in the corner. So here I am, in the corner. So anyways, here I got a fresh install of openSUSE right here in front of me. And I haven't done anything yet here. This is freshly installed and nothing else. So from here, I guess I'm just going to close the welcome screen for starters and get that out of the way. I'm going to come over here to the menu first real quick and open up our YAS software and just kind of log in, because I want to show you the repositories real quick, because one of the first things I like to do is kind of speed up Zypper a little bit. And there's a cool little utility that kind of comes in handy for that. It's called mirrorsorcerer, and what mirrorsorcerer does is it kind of updates your mirrors. If you don't live in Europe or around Germany, then these are fine for those areas, but if you live outside of that part of the world, like I am in the United States, and some people are in other parts like Australia and China, what have you, and so these mirrors aren't really the fastest if you're not in Germany. So that can be rectified by changing those mirrors or those repos URLs to something more local, like a US mirror. And so what mirrorsorcerer does is it kind of does all that for you. It updates those mirrors and sticks them into the repos there in the YAS software. So I'm going to open up the terminal here, and you can get that right from the repos that are existing. So if I just do a sudo zypper in for install mirrorsorcerer, and press enter, and then just authenticate and let that download. Then from here, it'll just kind of set it all up for you and kind of takes the pain out of it. And so that'll kind of speed things up, which is really cool. And so I'm just going to say yes to all this and let it do its magic. And as you can see, this install was pretty straightforward. And so that will speed up the mirrors there. And they also say on their GitHub website, you can enable the service, and then that will allow it to just kind of keep refreshing the mirrors there. So sudo systemctl enable _now mirrorsorcerer, and I believe that's the thing there. And doesn't look like it actually activated the service, but the service isn't, in my experience, that big a deal as long as you have the mirrors in there. But typically that does update. That might have something to do with, they might be having a temporary issue there. But now if we go back in here into YAS, and if I go into configuration repositories, now you can see that they're the same. Wow. So I'm going to cancel that real quick. That should be changed to, oh, actually, I think I got to run mirrorsorcerer first. Since that didn't enable by itself, I got to manually run it. Yeah, so let me just run it manually. So we're going to do that, mirrorsorcerer-x. And requires super user. Okay, sudo mirrorsorcerer-x. There we go. That's better. So now it's going through the different mirror caches here and matching them to the US version, because I'm in the US, so it is detecting my location. And mirror cache-us- east.opensuse.org, and those mirrors are supposed to be faster because they're closer to where I am right now. I'm on the east coast of the US, and so that should kind of cure that. And now they'll show up over here in this window. Of course, I might have to restart YAST. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. So yes, the way it goes. So jump back in here. And I'm just going to go directly to the repositories link there. That kind of is a little bit of a shortcut to get to where we just were. And here we go. And so now you can see it's updated to mirrorcache.us.east. So now you got the fastest mirrors in here instead of the default ones from Europe. So for someone like me that doesn't live in Europe, especially near Germany, then this can really make a difference theoretically. It seems to be faster to me anyway. There's another thing they recommend on the website too, is to type in export and do an export for the zip, ZYPP underscore multi-curl equals 0. And if you set that to 0, it will speed up your download as well. And there's an explanation on the GitHub website that explains that in more detail. And I'm going to do a distro upgrade here real quick just to see if anything sped up a little. Not that I have much to compare it to, but that looks good. I wanted to do this anyways. I kind of like to have everything up to date before I do things. So we'll just let that update. And the other thing is you can actually use DNF on here too. A lot of people don't realize that, but DNF is the package manager that's used on Fedora and some other RPM distros, typically based on Fedora. But DNF is a really nice package manager too. And openSUSE is very accommodating for DNF, believe it or not. In fact, you can download it in their repos and specify a nice little thing here. Let's do a sudo zipper in DNF. And then we're going to add this little parameter here, RPM dash repos dash openSUSE dash Tumbleweed, because we're running Tumbleweed here as opposed to Leap. And now what it's going to do is it's going to download a customized version of DNF that has built-in aliases and so forth. So it really is tailored for openSUSE, which is really cool. So if you like DNF better, then this is an alternative that you can use, an alternative to Zypper. And I kind of like that because that was actually one of the things I liked on Fedora is the DNF package manager. I always felt that it was a nice package manager. Not that Zypper's any slouch, but it does tend to be pretty slow sometimes if you're in a hurry. So let's try a sudo DNF Inkscape and see what that, oh, yeah, it would help if I did install Inkscape. So let's try that again. So I just hit my up arrow to repeat it and then type in for install and hit enter, and there we go. And as you can see, DNF is working just fine. It's looking up the repos here, and there you go. And just like in DNF on Fedora, no is the default answer when it's prompting you to install. So I'm going to change that to just like I would if I was in Fedora. So the default is yes. And you can also speed up DNF as well to optimize it. And I'll just go in the config file and show you how to do that too if you're not familiar. Okay, and we got that complete. So that installed Inkscape via DNF. Nice. So that worked out really good. Now let's go on to that next thing that I was telling you about, modifying the DNF comp file. And so we can kind of optimize that by doing a sudo vim /etc/dnf/dnf.conf. And we bring up and hit, this is our comp file for the DNF. And so you can see the defaults here. And I'm just going to go ahead and add in a few other things. So we'll pop down to the next line here and do an I for insert. And I think it's fastest mirrors that will let you choose the fastest mirror. So fastest mirror equals true. And then we got max parallel download. So I'm going to just kind of set that at 10 so we have parallel downloads going on here. And that's a thing I like. And also I think to complement fastest mirror, there's another, I think it's called delta RPM equals true. And so we'll activate that. And then default yes. That's the one that'll let it default to yes equals true. That way, instead of defaulting to no, it'll default to yes, because that's kind of what I'm comfortable with. That's what you have on other package managers by default. And the delta RPM, I can't remember off the top of my head what that is exactly, but I just did a WQ to write and quit. So now if I did like a sudo DNF Inkscape and just authenticate, it's telling me there's nothing to do. So why did I do that? Just to kind of refresh the comp file, actually. So that takes care of that. Now if I want to download something using DNF in the future, like let's say GIMP, I want to install that. Now you can see that the yes is there by default, and it all came up pretty snappy. So there's our Y for yes. So I like that. So the default yes was correct. I'm always not 100% sure whether I get that right, if it's default yes or yes by default. Yeah. But yeah, got it right the first time. Okay, and that was quick. So we got our install there on GIMP using DNF. Very cool. And now I'm going to type DNF alias. And so this will show you the aliases that correspond to zipper. So in zipper, you would do DUP for a distro upgrade, or you can do dist-upgrade, but you can also use it in DNF here on openSUSE because they got these aliases in there, and also ref for refreshing the cache, and then RI for reinstall. So those are like the big aliases that are probably most used with a zipper, and they are configured here so they work with DNF. So you can do a sudo DNF DUP if you want to do an update. And I think that's cool. Like I said, openSUSE was pretty accommodating. Nice. Double thumbs up for that. So anyways, now I'm going to do a sudo zipper install OPI. OPI is something I really like. And so what OPI is OPI is kind of like if you use Arch, for the Arch AUR, they have different helpers like yay and paru. And you could think of OPI as being like yay or paru for their open build service. The open build service, or OBS, is kind of like an equivalent to the AUR of Arch. Maybe not quite as vast, but it's got a ton of stuff in it. And so the OBS is their open build service, somewhat of an equivalent of the AUR, and then OPI, or OPI, some people like to call it, is the helper that builds it for you. So OPI is really nice, and that's why I am installing that right now. It's just something I've really come to love about openSUSE is I use OPI quite often, and it's actually an easy way to get codecs onto your openSUSE install and get the Pacman repos in there too. Actually, you can do it all in one shot just by typing in OPI Pacman, and that'll install your codecs and the Pacman repo, if I remember right. And of course, you can find hard to find things as well. So there we are, we got OPI in there. And so now if I do OPI, let's try Hypnotics and hit enter. Hypnotics is an app that's available on Linux Mint, but you can find it here. And wow, what's all that? Oh, wait a minute. I think you got a sudo OPI, I think. So we'll do sudo OPI Hypnotics. And then it should look for it, and we'll do that again, rinse and repeat. One, and there we go, that looks better. So now we can select from our choices here, and I'm just gonna go with one. Typically one is your best choice on the list. And I think like the more official repos are in blue up there in that cyan color. And then the reds I think are more like private repos or user created repos. So typically I go with the blue ones, which normally they're going to prioritize that with the number one. So there we go. Now if I go up here, I can actually have Hypnotics on openSUSE. Wow! There's a lot of distros where you can't really find Hypnotics, a Linux Mint app, on their distro unless you go and build it somewhere. So having it available here on OPI and getting it off the open build service is really cool. Hypnotics is not running because it looks like it needs libmpv. Wow. So what I want to do is look for mpv devel out of the list, select it, and then choose our main repo there. So libmpv-devel. Devel. Get those devel files in there, and then that'll install all the libraries that we need for the MPV player, including MPV. And then we will have a working Hypnotics, theoretically. So apparently those are kind of two separate things. You gotta kind of add MPV. I think because MPV player is installed by default on Linux Mint, and isn't at least on the XFCE version of openSUSE, so just adding this in will easily solve the problem. And typically when you want to add library files on openSUSE, you want to use a development version anyway. So your library file name -devel typically is going to solve any kind of library issues that you need to resolve when you install new software. Excellent. So now let's go in here, hit Hypnotics, and there it is. Excellent. So I'm going to hit TV channels, and then here we got all these different TV channels. So it looks like so far Hypnotics is working. And so you can choose from stuff from all over the world. Very cool. And so I'm going to find something from my part of the world, which is the USA. And I'm going to scroll down and just try a channel or two here. Maybe CNN. That hasn't really been working lately there in Hypnotics, so I'm not holding my breath that that's going to come up. But maybe NBC or Reuters, one of these guys. I'll try Reuters. They're kind of like old reliable. CBS worked, so we'll try that one instead. So there you go. Live streaming internet TV. Cool. I like it. So there you go. That's just a little sample of the power of OPI or OPI. Really nice. So now I'm going to do a sudo OPI Microsoft-fonts, because Microsoft fonts is another thing I like adding on here, and then just authenticate here. And OPI makes it really easy to add in the Microsoft fonts because it's easy to remember, Microsoft-fonts. And there's a little warning there that it's a user repo contributed by the community, and I'm good with that. Font's a font. So we'll have that install, and then just hit yes or enter to continue. And now it's downloading, building our Microsoft fonts. So that way, if I were to go into something like GIMP or Inkscape, then I'll have Microsoft fonts to choose from. And then it's asking me if I want to keep the repo, and I'm good with that in case any updates come out to the font for whatever reason. So now we could choose either one of these, and we should see the Microsoft fonts in there to choose from. So if I just pick any old template here and open up Inkscape, and then if I were to just try to render some fonts in here, maybe take this guy and pop it over there. If I go into my drop-down list, now I can see all kinds of Microsoft fonts, like the Comic Sans and the Courier New and the Sego and Impact. That's another good one from Microsoft. So you can sit there and type something in, enlarge that a bit, and there's your Impact. Nice. So easy peasy. We got easy access to Microsoft fonts, and that's something I like to have on there. So there you go. The font thing. And I'm just going to close out of here. And so that takes care of that. What else do I do? Let me think. I know there's something else I do. Let me do a sudo dnf install flatpak. Because flatpak is something I use occasionally on openSUSE. Every once in a while there's something, especially OBS Studio, I like using the flatpak version just because I've configured it that way for flatpak, and everything's more consolidated with all the plugins and the modifications I do. And so once I get that in there, then I can also install flathub, and I can't remember what the command is for that. So I'm just going to open up Firefox, and I'm just going to jump in here and go out to flathub.org. And that's kind of the easiest way to do it without having to use your brain very much. So out here at FlatHub, all I got to do is hit this Setup FlatHub button. And then choose my distro, which in this case is openSUSE. And then I can just copy this guy here just by clicking the little icon off to the side. Actually, the FlatHub repo. So just click the icon. Check mark shows that I did it. And then I'm going to do Control-Shift-V as in Victor. And there we go. Pasted it in, hit enter. And just like that, it's done. So now all I got to do is restart. So I'm going to do sudo reboot. and just let that thing restart. Okay, and we're back on our desktop here. And so that took care of all that. Got the restart all of the way. So now the flathub and flatpak stuff will work just fine. And without rebooting, it's not going to show up in your menu if you install something. So anyways, let's go into Yast now. The final thing I like to do is I like to just go into Yast, open up their control center, and then jump into the system over here and select bootloader. This is the grub bootloader when you first turn on your computer. Just authenticate to get in here. And on the bootloader, by default, it takes about 8 seconds for that menu to time out and then continue the boot, which is a pretty long boot time, really, for my taste. So I like to take that 8 and just change it to 1. If you don't want to see it at all, you can actually hide the menu on boot, but you may have to have your timeout still around 1 or 0. But I like to have it leave a second there just in case there's some reason I need to get into the boot menu. It just kind of makes things easier. And 1 second is pretty nice. You can also have a default boot selection. I just leave it the way it is, but if you want to have a specific kernel load, then that can kind of come in handy there. And then you got your splash screen and all these. None of these are really changed, but you can do that here. If you're a little more advanced and you want to tweak around with your splash screen and all that, then you can do that as well. But I'm just going to hit there, apply, and let this do its thing here. The main thing I'm concerned about is just having a quicker boot. So changing that from 8 seconds to 1 is the thing that makes me happy. And there we go. So I think that's everything. So for some of you out there that like openSUSE but might not be familiar with some of those little tweaks, I thought I'd just kind of share those with you. And if they come in handy for anybody, then I guess I didn't waste my time or yours. So anyways, I hope that was helpful. And if it was and you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. And if you didn't like it, you know the drill. Leave 2 thumbs up. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.